This is Fashion 110-111, Sewing for Fashion Design 2 and Clothing Construction, and this is sample number C6, and it'll also segue into C7 and C8 for the Technique Sewing Notebook. We're going to begin with a square of fabric approximately 18 inches square. Then I'm going to fold it diagonally and press. We're going to be doing bias strips on this, so we need to find a true bias at 45 degrees to the selvage edge. Then I want you to measure in 1/4 of an inch, draw a line from the fold, and then measure 1.5 inches from there. You're going to be cutting out 2 bias strips. Once you've done this, go ahead and cut. I'm going to cut off the fold. I'm also going to clean up the 2 ends, making sure that they too are at 45 degrees to my cut end. I now have 2 bias strips at 1.5 inches in width. I'm going to use the first one for sample C6. I'm going to take it, simply cut it in half like so, and we're going to be joining these 2 bias strips so they make a continuous line where the stretch is not made non-working. If I were to go ahead and sew it here, I have stretch going this way and I have stretch going this way, and it's going to end up very odd. We want to go ahead and line it up so the stretch won't affect the sewing. So we're going to be joining the 2 diagonal ends. In order to position this properly, you need to position it so they make a 90-degree angle when you position them. If you position them like so, when you sew it, you're going to make a nice, beautiful mitered corner at 90 degrees, but you won't have a long strip. So we're going to go ahead and set it up so they are at 90 degrees. I'm going to offset it inside, so I'm stitching at 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that 1/4 inch is going to begin right at the bottom of that little V right there, and we'll stitch to the other V on the opposite side. I'm placing a regular sewing machine foot on the machine to do this. We will be changing that foot for the next 2 samples. Okay, I'm going to begin by lining my needle up right with that V. Seam allowance is about 1/4 of an inch. Back stitch. And stitch forward. When you're done, trim your threads, press your seam open, and now I have a nice continuous strip. Notice that the stretch is not compromised by the seam, and that's the goal of all of this, is that your stretch is uncompromised. I'm going to press my seam allowance open, and that will complete this sample. Okay, my sample is now pressed open, and you can see that the 2 ends are sticking up. If that bothers you, you can trim them off. And that completes C6.